For a closer look now on the situation in Japan, I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Bill Dorodi. He is an expert on health and human security. He is currently with the Center of Non-Traditional Security Studies at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies in the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. Thanks for joining us this weekend, Dr. Dorodi. Now, Tokyo being criticized just yesterday for its delayed reaction. A New York Times report, for those of you who don't know, said the government waited a day before it ordered seawater flooding at the power plant, which allowed heat to build up to dangerous levels. Why do you think there is such a delay?
I'm more interested in trying to work out what the Americans are suggesting here. If you had a fire in your kitchen, the first thing you would do is unlikely to be to flood the whole house. You would go through a whole series of other steps in order to address the problem that you faced in the first place, and that's what the nuclear authorities did in Japan. They put in the control rods, they closed down the fissile reactions in the reactor, they then put in generators to override the electricity that had failed to drive the pumps, and it's only when all their normal procedures failed that they then had to look for more drastic measures. I think it's entirely understandable.
Okay, another criticism again from the Americans that Japan's self-defense forces waited until just very recently to help out. Was their help really crucial in stabilizing the reactors?
Well, I don't know if the Americans have heard, but maybe 10,000 people have lost their lives in a tsunami in Japan, and I can imagine that the self-defense forces were busy doing other things that were more pressing and more immediate. We also know that the access routes to the reactors are actually pretty much impassable, so it's been no doubt very difficult to get there.
Okay, what about the victims of this disaster? Japanese are apparently well prepared for earthquakes, but would they be suffering from any kind of major trauma in the aftermath of this?
That's an interesting question, Tim. A lot of people often presume that disasters lead to people being traumatized and requiring psychological counseling. But in fact, those who study disasters have shown in many instances, strange as it may seem, that a disaster can bring a community together. For the first time, they cooperate, they have a single focus that they share and work on together. And there are many instances of communities who say that they're actually better off, unfortunate as it may be, because their village or town was hit by a tornado or whatever else. I think there is a dangerous tendency in the contemporary world to presume that people need external professional support when actually that overrides their internal resilience mechanisms and the ability of a community to sort out its own problems without the need of outsiders.
Okay, Japan is a big donor to the developing country and the development of developing countries. Do you think this earthquake now with Japan having to rebuild their own country, how will this affect countries it is helping?
Well, the single biggest effect is going to be that there's a serious shortfall of energy supply and provision in Japan. And that's going to affect the whole Japanese economy. We've already seen large major international companies saying that they're going to have to stop producing either silicon chips or vehicles or whatever it is that they supply to the world market. This earthquake and tsunami is going to affect all of us. That doesn't have to be disastrous. But it is going to have an impact on everybody, and no doubt that will also have an impact on the kind of aid that the Japanese government can provide to developing countries.
All right, we're just getting this across the wires now, Bill. Traces of radioactive iodine found in Tokyo tap water. What does this say about the Japanese government has been criticized as well for its transparency. With this revelation today, what do you make out of this?
I'd probably move with a degree of caution at this stage. We've already seen that there's been some pernicious rumors circulating about the situation in Japan right from the word go. Having said that, the story you've already pointed out in the news about radioactive
food contamination,
milk and spinach. But we don't know at this stage what the level of contamination people are talking about. It could be natural variations in the background radiation. Some parts of the planet are more radioactive than others. There's all sorts of reasons that this could happen. I think at this stage it's probably better to reserve judgment.
So in your opinion, how much transparency should the Japanese government be providing? How much information should they be providing? If something like this turned out to be harmless, should it be disclosed to the public?
Well, obviously they'll probably feel propelled to provide as much information as possible, but we know in many instances that itself creates undue concern amongst populations. We've seen some governments, like the British government for instance, have been saying that scientifically there's really no concern for people beyond a 30 kilometre zone from the reactors. Even